başarılarının ardından bu arada Quartararo ve Toprak Razgatlıoğlu tabii ki.
The Valencia test was supposed to be calm, a final breath before the paddock disappeared into winter silence. But inside Yamaha's garage, that calm dissolved long before the engines warmed. Their long-awaited V4, years of planning, hundreds of hours of simulations, countless internal debates, was finally in the hands of all four riders. And instead of giving Yamaha clarity, it opened a door to something far more complicated. What the team found wasn't a breakthrough, it wasn't a disaster. It was a mirror reflecting everything Yamaha must overcome if they hope to survive MotoGP's new era. And at the center of that reflection stood Fabio Quartararo, a former world champion who knows that every lap, every comment, and every test now carries weight. Yamaha expected answers in Valencia. Instead, they received a question that will define the next 3 seasons of their history. Valencia usually offers closure, a day of gentle evaluation, final adjustments, and early ideas for next year. But for Yamaha, the circuit transformed into something else entirely, a pressure chamber. Because the V4 is not just a new engine, it is a statement of desperation, ambition, and reinvention. From the moment the bikes rolled out, engineers felt the tension. They weren't analyzing performance, they were searching for identity. Yamaha had abandoned 2 decades of inline-4 philosophy to chase the momentum that Ducati, KTM, and Aprilia have sharpened into MotoGP's dominant formula. But the question whispered around the paddock remained the same. Was this leap bold enough, or was it already too late? The first laps carried hesitancy. The riders looked for reference points that no longer existed. Every vibration, every braking pulse, every corner entry felt unfamiliar. Yamaha had expected teething problems. What they didn't expect was how quickly all 4 riders pointed to the same weak point. The front end, the part Yamaha once ruled the sport with, felt unstable. And that was only the beginning. Fabio Quartararo walked into the test with a quiet seriousness. Not frustration, not anger. A measured calm, the kind that grows only when a rider has waited too long for change. His contract has just 2 more seasons. His future is tied to results, not promises. And he knows Yamaha can no longer afford polite progress. On paper, his 15th place finish didn't look dramatic, half a second behind Raul Fernandez. Respectable considering the low power mode Yamaha insisted on. But Fabio's expression after the run told a different story. The stopwatch wasn't the problem. He pointed directly to Yamaha's greatest loss. "We clearly missed our strongest point," he said, "the front feeling." Those 3 words cut deeper than any lap time, because the old M1 was defined by that sensation. Riders could carry speed where others only dared. The bike rotated naturally. It trusted the rider, and the rider trusted it. This V4 didn't. And then Fabio revealed something even more revealing. He couldn't push, not on the old bike or the new one. The comparison was meaningless because neither motorcycle allowed him to ride freely. According to insiders, that comment sent a wave through Yamaha's engineering group, not because it was negative, but because it was honest in a way they couldn't ignore. Fabio wasn't complaining. He was signaling that Yamaha's entire philosophy needed a reset. But the most unsettling moment was still ahead. Inside the Yamaha garage, the mood shifted from curiosity to quiet unease. Engineers huddled around datasheets showing a pattern nobody wanted to see. The V4 didn't behave like an M1 at all. The weight transfer was different. The engine inertia created unfamiliar reactions. The aero load changed how the bike entered and exited corners. Everything Yamaha once relied on was gone. The inline-4 had a rhythm, a breathing pattern riders understood intuitively. Fabio, Rossi, Lorenzo, every Yamaha great extracted magic from its smoothness and predictability. But the V4 delivered a sharper heartbeat, one Yamaha wasn't yet prepared to control. Yamaha had hoped to build a hybrid, a V4 with the soul of the M1. But the more laps they completed, the clearer it became. The V4 was something else entirely. Even worse, they still had no baseline setup. No foundation, no stable reference. Every change created new questions instead of answers. The engineers knew they were building from zero. But Valencia made them confront a more difficult truth. Zero was lower than they expected. And right as the tension began to rise, another rider entered with information Yamaha desperately needed. Jack Miller didn't approach the V4 like a debut. He approached it like a returning language, one he'd spoken for years with Ducati and KTM. And his first comments sliced directly into the core of Yamaha's struggles. "Electronics still need a lot of work," he said. "Acceleration, progression, we need better delivery." Miller wasn't referring to preference, he was describing a structural weakness. V4 torque isn't gentle, it hits hard. And without refined traction control, the bike reacts abruptly the moment a rider picks it up mid-corner. Ducati, KTM, and Aprilia spent years smoothing that edge. Yamaha was experiencing the raw form. Some mechanics later described the behavior as nervous. Not unrideable, but unpredictable. A trait riders can tolerate only for short stints, not full race distances. Yet Miller also provided something priceless: perspective. Fabio's lap, he said, was scorching, and he wasn't exaggerating. A 1-minute 29.9 on conservative power was not normal. It was the first sign that Yamaha's V4 carried a ceiling much higher than the inline 4 could ever reach. For the first time, a flicker of confidence returned to the garage. But the next voice would pull them back to reality. Fabio's fast lap spread through the garage like a shockwave. Engineers leaned over monitors with a mix of disbelief and hope. If the bike could produce that speed now, this early, what would it do once Yamaha unlocked its full potential? It was the moment Yamaha needed, a reminder of why they took this risk. But the feeling didn't last, because test rider Augusto Fernandez had already delivered his verdict, and his feedback echoed Fabio's in ways Yamaha could not ignore. He too highlighted instability on the front. He too felt the bike lacked predictable turning. He too struggled with consistency. And then came the detail that shifted the conversation. "We were riding practically the same bike as Misano," Fabio clarified. The V4 hadn't evolved at all. The bike that dazzled fans in its wildcard debut was the exact same machine, only now exposed under deeper scrutiny. Valencia wasn't a development test, it was a diagnostic test. And Yamaha's diagnosis confirmed something far more delicate. They were still at the very beginning. Augusto Fernandez's wildcard race had shown sparks of promise, but Valencia exposed the limits of the prototype. His feedback aligned perfectly with Fabio's. The front felt vague, the bike lacked predictable rotation, acceleration wasn't smooth. 4 riders, 4 separate test plans, one identical conclusion. This wasn't rider preference, this was structural. The V4's identity was still undefined. It didn't yet know if it wanted to behave like Ducati's precision, KTM's aggression, or Aprilia's balance. Yamaha had attempted to create its own flavor, but right now, the ingredients weren't blending. And this shared feedback created a rare moment in Yamaha's recent history: complete clarity. But clarity also brings pressure, because if Yamaha failed to tame the V4 quickly enough, the consequences would ripple far beyond one season. And then, in the middle of that tension, a surprising twist emerged from a rider who wasn't supposed to be a central figure. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu arrived at the test without expectations. A rookie in MotoGP terms, coming from a championship built around a completely different tire philosophy. Most assumed he'd struggle. Michelin's front tire demands a different style, one Toprak had never fully explored in World SBK. But the paddock underestimated him again. He clocked a 1-minute 30.6, an astonishing benchmark considering the V4's unstable behavior and Yamaha's early development stage. Fabio was impressed, Rins was impressed, Even Miller, accustomed to V4 aggression, raised an eyebrow. Because Toprak did something the bike wasn't ready for. He adapted faster than expected, perhaps faster than the motorcycle could keep up with. According to whispers inside the team, Toprak's speed raised an uncomfortable question. If a rider can already extract this much potential, what's holding the bike back? The answer pointed not at riders, but at Yamaha's timeline. While Yamaha pushes to accelerate their V4 development, their rivals have been refining their concepts for more than a decade. Ducati's electronics are the product of years of trial, adjustment, data, and patience. KTM spent season after season building a foundation before ever threatening the podium. Aprilia transformed a once fragile project into a weapon through slow, meticulous evolution. Yamaha is trying to compress those years into months. Their target? Competitive baseline by mid-2026. Race-winning form by 2027. But internal analysts quietly describe that ambition as ambitious to the point of strain. Because the V4 isn't just an engine. It impacts every measurable part of the motorcycle. Engine braking, aero stability, ride height distribution, mid-corner balance, and tire preservation. And if Yamaha misses this window, the effect won't be limited to performance. It will hit Fabio's contract. It will hit team morale. It will hit Yamaha's presence in MotoGP's elite. But one specific weakness could derail everything. Front-end confidence is not a setting. It's not a button. It's not even a single component. It is the harmony created by dozens of interconnected pieces working as one. Crankshaft inertia, engine braking, aero stability, steering geometry, chassis flex, weight distribution, and tire behavior. When Yamaha lost the front feeling, they didn't lose a strength, they lost their soul. Fabio and Miller both described the same sensation. The bike hesitates, it doesn't communicate, it reacts instead of guiding. And without trust in the front, Yamaha cannot unlock the V4's true acceleration or corner entry potential. Some insiders believe this will be Yamaha's hardest battle. Not power, not electronics, not aero, but identity. The V4 must develop its own confidence, its own language, its own definition of what a Yamaha should feel like in this era. And yet, despite everything, something began to shift inside the garage. When the final lap of the test ended and the garage doors rolled shut, something unexpected filled the room. Not defeat, not fear, not resignation, direction. Fabio saw structure, something Yamaha could build around. Miller saw potential, power waiting to be shaped. Rins saw adaptability, the riders adjusting quicker than expected. Toprak saw opportunity, a frontier he could grow into. Valencia didn't give Yamaha answers, it gave them a map filled with problems, yes, but also a path forward, one they can finally follow without guessing. Because now, for the first time since Yamaha began this risky transformation, they know exactly what the V4 is missing. And more importantly, they know exactly what it could become. If Yamaha can solve what they discovered in Valencia, MotoGP's next era may look very different from the one we've known. Not because Yamaha returned to glory, but because they rebuilt themselves from the ground up. A transformation born not from success, but from the courage to start over.